Good morning. This is my very first experience of taking an online class, which I'm not too much used to. So let's directly go ahead with today's topic. It's carcinoma gallbladder and cholangiocarcinoma, presented by me, Dr. Jaswant, Associate Professor, Department of Surgery. Regarding carcinoma gallbladder, it's the most common biliary malignancy with very high incidence is reported in Asian countries and Chile. Worldwide, the incidences are much less when we compare with many parts of India, like northern India it's 21.5 per lakh and Pakistan it's roughly 14. The disease is more common in urban population but with low socio-economic status. It is one of the very few cancers with very high female preponderance of roughly 6:1, some places as low as 2:1, but still female outnumber male, and the incidence increases with age. The rate varies within Indian population, as I said, from 5 per 1 lakh in North India to less than 1.5 per lakh in South India. It is the third most common malignancy in northeastern parts. This site of cancer is not among the top 10 leading sites in both the sexes in population based cancer registry. So what we are dealing today is with a rare cancer, but it is actually fatal, and the guys, those who are from UP, Bihar or Rajasthan, they'll be seeing more number of these patients. Etiologically, as you have already told some roughly 1.5 years back, that wherever there is genetic mutation or cell division, it is a fertile bed for malignancy. So etiology is some form of chronic inflammation like gallbladder stones. More than 3/4 of the patients have gallstones, but if you see the other side of the coin, less than 3% of the stone carriers have cancer. Stronger association is seen with porcine gallbladder, which is calcification of the gallbladder. Selective mucosal calcification, that is type 2 and type 3, has much more risk than complete calcification. There is a term called as APBDJ, anomalous pancreatico-biliary duct junction. It is having very strong association with cholangiocarcinoma as well as with the gallbladder malignancy. It is an independent risk factor seen in 17% of the patient, and the etiology which has been proposed is that as there is a anomalous biliary pancreatic junction, a part of pancreatic juice backflows in the gallbladder and the biliary tree, causing bile stasis and increasing the chance of malignancy. Then attribution to some carcinogens like rubber industry, and a very strong association with mustard oil, the use of which is very prevalent in UP and Bihar along the Ganges belt where the disease is highly prevalent. Then there are some less known causes like biliary disease, Mirizi syndrome, chronic typhoid and H. pylori carriers, female gender, old age, obesity, alcohol and tobacco use are also associated, IBD, polyposis coli, and some inherited predisposition. A question obviously arises, why females are more prone? The possible explanation is the preponderance of gallstone in women, suggesting that female sex hormones, especially estrogen, plays a role in pathogenesis of gallbladder stone and gallbladder cancer. Some researchers have found high level of estrogen receptor in gallbladder malignancy. There are some pre-malignant conditions like GB polyp. Bigger polyps and smaller numbers tend to progress to the cancer in 5 to 15 years, but unlike colon cancer do not arise from precursor adenomas in majority of cases. So pre-malignant conditions leading to malignancy are not that common. If we talk about pathology, as you all know, it's like dysplasia in situ and invasive malignancy sequence. In more than 90% patients, surrounding epithelium shows severe dysplasia or carcinoma in situ, but majority do not arise from adenoma, as I said in the previous slide. If we see the gross appearance of the tumor, 60% cases it is in the fundus of the gallbladder, 30% in the body, and 10% in the neck. There are three forms: infiltrative, which is commonest, then nodular, and papillary. Papillary is the safest. As the name suggests, it has a small stalk, minimum invasion, and as the name of the infiltrative suggests, it causes thickening and indurration of the gallbladder wall, spread in the subserosal plane, and then infiltrating in the liver parenchyma. Histologically, majority of the patients are having adenocarcinoma. 80 plus 6 plus 5, more than 90%, 92% of the patients are having variations of adenocarcinomas. Some other malignancies are also found, they are very rare. Grade is having the prognostic value, and unfortunately majority presents with grade 3, grade 4 tumors which are poorly differentiated. Spread, as you all know, gallbladder fossa, a GB bed, is in close relation with segment 4B and 5 of the liver. Also in anatomy we have read gallbladder wall is thinner, it lacks submucosal layer. Also there is a single muscle layer, and serosal layer is densely adherent to the liver bed in the form of cystic plate. So direct invasion is the most common mode of spread, which is seen very early. Also there can be lymphatic, intraperitoneal, intraductal, neural, or hematogenous spread. Once it penetrates the thin muscle layer, the tumor has access to major lymphovascular channels which lies submucosally and in the just next to the muscle. So the tumor spreads very fast. The difference which is from the differentiation from of gallbladder malignancy to other malignancy is it has a remarkable propensity to seed and grow in the peritoneal cavity, mainly because of E-cadherin mutation, which causes cell-cell adhesions. So many a times we find the tumor along the needle tract for biopsy or in the laparoscopic port site when surgery is done for simple cholecystectomy. Also there is high propensity of intra-abdominal recurrence with distant metastasis. Extra abdominal site of metastasis is lung, but it is very rare. Hematogenous metastasis tend to be from invasion into small vein extending directly from gallbladder into the portal venous system, leading to liver mets. Hematogenous liver metastasis is different from direct invasion. Direct invasion is through the liver bed. Hematogenous, you can have multiple tumor nodules in different lobes of liver. Preponderance is more for segment 4 and segment 5. 66% of gallbladder vein end in intrahepatic portal branches of right lobe, so right lobe is involved, much more common. The first level of lymph nodes are along the bile duct system. Initially, when we knew less about this tumor, we just had the classification of N0 and N1. N0 is no node, N1 is any node. Now we have gone to N1 and N2. N1 is node along the biliary ductal system. Second level or second echelon nodes are pancreaticoduodenal nodes or nodes along the major vessel like celiac, superior mesenteric, and para-aortic. Nodal involvement is 55 to 65%, and it is in direct correlation with the depth of invasion. More is the T stage, more is the N stage. There are many staging systems, you need not know them, it is only for the postgraduates like Naveen and Japanese system. You can know AJCC or TNM system, which I am discussing. T1A, T1B is lamina propria and muscular layer. T2 is perimuscular connective tissue. T3 is tumor perforation to serosa. Make a note of it. Direct invasion of liver or adjacent organ is T3. T4 is involvement of major hepatic artery or portal vein or more than two organs of involvement. This is the difference. Here even in T3 one organ is involved, which itself shows that direct spread is very common. Then N0 and N1 regional nodes. M0 and M1 metastasis. Regional nodes include cystic duct, common bile duct, common hepatic and portal nodes. You can very well see as soon as the nodes are involved, there is a big stage progression to stage 3B, and when it is T4, it is stage 4A. Clinical presentation, many of the patients present with the features of acute and chronic cholecystitis. Biliary tract obstruction in the form of jaundice, right upper quadrant pain, fever and weight loss is the feature of advanced malignancy. Signs of adjacent organ invasion like gastric outlet obstruction again shows advanced disease. Majority of the patients have loco-regionally advanced disease with invasion of organ or metastasis at the time of presentation. Identical to the symptoms of biliary colic or chronic cholecystitis. That's why patients are being treated for the assumption of benign pathology for long time. Incidental finding at the time of surgery for cholecystitis or pathologically review of resected gallbladder shows the malignancy. There is a term for this. This is called as incidentally detected malignancy. 20% of the patients have incidentally detected gallbladder cancer. You should make a note of it whenever there is an elderly patient 70 years or more with history of recent weight loss and right upper quadrant pain, or the typically biliary colic pain is replaced by continuous pain of a different nature, boring pain, you should think of the malignancy. As I said, jaundice and anorexia are sign of advanced disease. When more advanced cases, patient can have a palpable gallbladder mass or malignant ascites. For diagnosis, we need ultrasound. Usually it is the first investigation of choice because majority of the patient come with right upper abdominal pain or jaundice or obstructive jaundice in particular. Then you have to go ahead with contrast enhanced CT scan to assess the extent and resectability of the disease. There is a specific serum tumor marker CA19-9 elevated in more than 80% of the patient population. If you are strongly suspecting the gallbladder cancer which is spread or advanced and not resectable, you are free to perform percutaneous fine needle aspiration cytology or FNAC or percutaneous biopsy. Then so that you can start the palliative treatment for the patient. As I have said in my previous classes, in oncology, the aim of treatment should be very clear. Curative, when you think you can go in and knock the entire tumor out, thereby making the patient disease free at least for a while. While palliative is the intent when you know that you cannot take the complete disease out, you just want to halt the progression, thereby giving some extra days or months of the life. Then you can have diagnostic laparoscopy. Management, as far as management is concerned, simple cholecystectomy in early stage disease. Mind you, it's only confined for T1A disease, confined to the mucosa, and you have taken the gallbladder out, simple cholecystectomy has been performed, and in histopathological examination it is found out that there is a T1A gallbladder cancer confined to mucosa. Then you need not do anything else. For other patients, you have an option of radical cholecystectomy, which is en bloc resection of gallbladder fossa and surrounding liver parenchyma along with regional lymph nodes. This is done for the disease with transmural spread but confined disease. Nowadays we go a step ahead and we take out the involved single organ, like if there is a fundus disease which is adherent to the part of stomach, then we might as well do distal gastrectomy, or we might do, if the disease is spread more on the right liver, we might as well do lobectomy or partial hepatectomy along with radical cholecystectomy. But as I have said, majority of the patients present with advanced disease. In them our aim is palliation and we give chemotherapy, gemcitabine based chemotherapy, which results in minimal progression of the life by say 6 months or 1 year. Prognosis is very poor. Median survival is less than 6 months. 5-year survival is less than 5%. If you will open Bailey and Love, now you will be at least finding half page or 1 page on this topic. But if you will go 6 or 7 or 8 years down the line, and you will see Bailey used to give just 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs on gallbladder malignancies, considering it to be a very fatal and a rare disease. Now coming to cholangiocarcinoma, it is relatively uncommon tumor. It refers to the bile duct cancer arising from intrahepatic, perihilar or extrahepatic biliary tree, but it excludes gallbladder malignancy and ampullary carcinoma, ampulla periampullary carcinoma. Cholangiocarcinoma arises from epithelial cells of bile duct. It is common in Central Europe and many Asian countries like Japan and Thailand. But overall incidence of cholangiocarcinoma is much less than the gallbladder cancer. It is seen more with increasing age. 70% of the patients are more than 65 years of age. Among the three, I said intrahepatic, hilar and distal. Hilar is most common and gender ratio is like 1.5 times more in male, unlike gallbladder cancer. Important point for you all to remember as far as MCQs is concerned or as far as your theory exams are concerned, there are some definitive set of risk factors for cholangiocarcinoma, like ulcerative colitis. Whenever they ask about ulcerative colitis, among its consequences you can as well write cholangiocarcinoma. Primary sclerosing cholangitis has a very strong association. Choledochal cyst, hepatolithiasis for intrahepatic. I guess I am audible now. There was some technical glitch and I'm not sure. Hello? 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 Am I audible? Yeah. So, okay, let's continue. As I was saying about the risk factors for cholangiocarcinoma, so ulcerative colitis, sclerosing cholangitis, choledochal cyst, hepatolithiasis for intrahepatic bile duct tumor. Also, you might be knowing choledochal cyst like gallstones are risk factor for carcinoma gallbladder. CBD stones are the risk for cholangiocarcinoma extrahepatic. I have made a special note of liver flukes like Ascaris or Opisthochloris. Liver flukes were once very common in Asian countries like Japan and Thailand, thereby making cholangiocarcinoma a commoner malignancy as compared to rest of the world. Then there is some study which show that thorotrast dye exposure, typhoid carrier and ADPKD autosomal dominant adult polycystic kidney disease, all these are related with cholangiocarcinoma. As I said, the location can be peripheral. Peripheral is intrahepatic. It is only 10 to 15%. Cirrhosis is not known and etiologies are known. People attribute it to the liver fluke or hepatolithiasis. Commonest is hilar cholangiocarcinoma, more than 50%. The site is biliary confluence. Then comes the distal cholangiocarcinoma, 20 to 30%, in which majority is peripancreatic in nature. If we talk about the extrahepatic distribution, you can see more than 60% is perihilar, either right or left hepatic duct or bifurcation or proximal CBD. 30% is distal CBD. Pathology: 50 to 75% of the cancer are located in upper third of extrahepatic biliary tree. Types, again, papillary, nodular or sclerosing. More than 90% of the bile duct tumors are adenocarcinoma. Most tumors grow slowly, spreading by local extension and rarely by hematogenous route. This you should know. This is Bismuth correlate classification of for malignancies for hilar cholangiocarcinoma. Like hilar is the central part. You have intrahepatic, you have distal, then you have hilar. Hilar, more than 60% of the patients, and we classify them as per Bismuth correlate classification. Type 1 is in the proximal CBD, type 2 is at the hilum, type 3A is more in the right side, 3B more in the left side, and 4 is involvement of both of the ducts. There is a term which you should remember, it's called as the Klatskin's tumor. Klatskin's tumors is used for hilar cholangiocarcinoma occurring bang at the confluence of right and left hepatic duct causing obstructive jaundice. It's one of the differential diagnosis for obstructive jaundice in which gallbladder is not palpable even though there is malignancy. Clinical features: there can be signs, there can be symptoms. Symptoms can be abdominal pain, anorexia and weight loss. Also the symptoms of pruritus like yellowish discoloration of eyes and itching. Signs can be jaundice, cachexia or palpable gallbladder, which is called as Courvoisier's law. Courvoisier's law states that in the presence of palpable gallbladder, painless jaundice is unlikely to be caused by gallstones. The idea behind this is chronic gallbladder stones cause shriveling or shrinking of the gallbladder, and when these stones go in the CBD causing obstructive jaundice, gallbladder is not palpable. On the other hand, if there is distal CBD malignancy which causes gallbladder to distend and the gallbladder is palpable, also there is no pain, so palpable gallbladder with painless obstructive jaundice is unlikely to be caused by gallstones because the cause usually is distal CBD tumor. Klatskin is an exception. Bile does not reach the gallbladder, so there is obstructive jaundice, there is painless jaundice, but gallbladder is not palpable in spite of the fact that the patient is having a malignancy. You can see palpable gallbladder and yellowish discoloration of the skin. To investigate, you have liver function test, elevated bilirubin, elevated alkaline phosphatase. Alkaline phosphatase elevates whenever there is some pathology in the biliary tree. Same holds with gamma glutamyl transferase. Also in alcoholics, GGT rises. ALT, AST might be normal because they are liver enzymes and they are liberated when hepatocytes are damaged. They are raised in hepatitis. Tumor marker CA19-9, this is the tumor marker for the biliary pancreatic tree. It is raised in gallbladder stone. It is also raised in the cholangiocarcinoma. Then you have USG abdomen, you have CT scan of the abdomen. There is a classical CT scan film where you can see a big mass in the hilum and you have dilated proximal biliary radicals. Another investigation is percutaneous transhepatic cholangiography. This is done for proximal tumors. When the tumor is proximally located, ERCP is not feasible, so we go through the percutaneous route to get the biliary drainage done, and we get some samples for cytology to prove the malignancy. It is done for hilar or intrahepatic cholangiocarcinomas. ERCP is done for a distal tumor where endobiliary stent can be placed and biopsies can be taken, thereby relieving the patient of the symptoms of jaundice. This is the image showing the endoscope, and this is the endoscope, and here lies the ampulla and junction of the biliary system, the opening of the bile duct, common bile duct. This is the part with malignancy causing the stricture, malignant stricture of distal CBD, and here lies the proximal dilation. Another image which shows the stricture higher up. This is mid CBD or proximal CBD stricture at the level of hilum and proximal dilation. MRCP showing obstruction at the level of hilum. This is the classical MRCP picture of Klatskin's tumor, where you can see right and left bile duct dilation proximal to hilum, and distal there is no dye. This is stomach and the duodenum. Extrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma ultrasound will reveal dilated biliary ductal system. CT scan abdomen will show the extent of disease. As I said, percutaneous cholangiogram can be done with internal stenting and brush biopsy. ERCP can be done with stenting and brush biopsy again, and MRI MRCP to know the exact extent of the disease. If the disease is resectable, we have to follow certain principles, like you have to resect the supraduodenal bile duct along with gallbladder, like cholecystectomy has to be done, and you have to restore bilioenteric continuity by doing anastomosis. Here is the example in which a part of liver was also removed for complete surgical cure. For extrahepatic disease, if the disease is proximal, resect the tumor with or without one lobe of liver up to the bifurcation. We have also to remove the nodes and the caudate lobe, and we have to do the anastomosis of small bowel, particularly jejunum, with the remaining bile duct. If there is mid CBD tumor, we have to excise the tumor up to negative margins, and we have to create Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy. For distal disease, we have to do pancreaticoduodenectomy, which is also called as Whipple's procedure. This is the diagram which shows Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy. Here you can see stomach and duodenum and proximal jejunum. We cut the jejunum, the proximal loop is taken up for the hepaticojejunostomy, and later we do jejunojejunostomy, so that the bile will enter roughly 30-40 centimeters distal to it, resulting in reduced chance of reflux. In this surgery, we have removed gallbladder and the bile duct. For unresectable patients, first aim is to relieve the patient of the jaundice by doing stenting. Stenting can be through percutaneous route or through endoscopic ERCP route, followed by chemoradiotherapy. Survival with surgery and chemoradiation is 2 to 3 years. This is for majority of the patients whom we operate with a curative intent. For unresectable palliative patients, survival is 6 to 12 months. This is the procedure in which we have shown. This is percutaneous route, percutaneous transhepatic biliary stenting. Needle is inserted and we through needle we negotiate and we find one of the dilated ducts from where the stent is inserted like this. This is the procedure, and this is the endoscopic way, ERCP. If the stricture is distal, then we are able to pass the stent. As I already said, majority of the patients are inoperable. Only 10 to 15% are suitable for surgical excision or resection. Resection may involve partial hepatectomy and reconstruction. For distal tumor repulse procedure, adjuvant chemoradiotherapy has limited role. The patients are having very poor prognosis. Median survival is 18 months. Best results are with distal CBD tumor, which when completely excised having the cure rate of 40%. But then you should remember, when we are talking about the incidence, the number of distal CBD tumors is only 20% or so. So even if they are giving the best cure, the overall prognosis for the cholangiocarcinoma is very poor. This was the last slide. I'll end my class, and I just wish you all to stay safe, stay home, stay secured. I cannot imagine when I was during my whole medical schooling that I was devoid of my hospital or my college, or was not able to see the patients for so many days. But then probably every time you face a new challenge, we have to find a new solution to it. Try to read as much as you can, try to build up your skill and build up your mind. All the best once again. Thanks.